TypeORM applications like Mover use entity objects to represent data in a database. Relational databases provide the ability to define relationships between different types of data, so we need entities that represent those relationships. In this lesson, you'll learn how to define relationships between different entity classes. The easiest way to understand entity relationships is to walk through an example. We'll use one of the Mover's features, the ability to track the location of a vehicle over time. Every vehicle has a list of past locations, and every time a ride starts or ends, the current location is added to that list. This feature is implemented with two tables, a vehicles table and a location history table. The location history table has a many-to-one relationships with vehicles. Any number of location history rows can be associated with a single vehicle row. In a database schema, this is expressed using a foreign key referenced in the location history table to the primary key of the vehicles table. But how do we express the same relationship between entity objects in our application? We'll start by looking at the so-called child entity in this relationship, location history. Specifically, let's look at the definition of the vehicle property. The many-to-one decorator indicates the nature of the relationship. Note that the relationship is many-to-one because we are describing it from the perspective of location history. In a minute, we'll look at how to implement the one-to-many relationship for the vehicle entity. The join column decorator is how you specify which column in the database table contains the foreign key reference to the parent table. In this example, the join column in the location history table is vehicle ID, which contains the primary key of the associated vehicle in the vehicles table. Now we come to one of the most important ways in which entities bridge relational tables to objects. The type of the vehicle property is not UUID, as you might expect if you just extracted the data from the table. The type is vehicle. That is, the vehicle property contains a reference to an instance of a vehicle entity object. The best part is this happens automatically. Whenever TypeORM instantiates a location history object from the database, it will also create or reuse a vehicle entity instance for the corresponding row in the vehicles table. So what about going in the other direction? What if we want to be able to automatically retrieve a list of location history entities associated with a vehicle? This is a little different because the vehicles table does not have a foreign key reference to the location history table. So let's look at the vehicle's location history property. The relationship in this direction is one-to-many. We can specify which property in the location history entity refers to the corresponding vehicle. Here we're using the location history's vehicle property that we just looked at. Finally, note the property type, a list of location history objects that is automatically generated whenever a vehicle's location history property is referenced. Let's review. In the relational database systems like CockroachDB, you can define relationships between tables. TypeORM lets you model those relationships with entity objects using property decorators to implement different types of relationships. Whenever you query the database, the correct entities to represent the relationships are created automatically. Now head to the lab and practice what you learned.